Amongst the many things that a seminary education probably doesn't give you is how to build a website. And in the 2020s, of course, a website is critical for the ministry that you're doing. So do you build it yourself or should you hire someone? What about Wix and WordPress and Squarespace and all these options of template-based sites? Or how much should it cost? And what's the deal with SEO? We're going to talk about all of this on today's Word Made Digital tutorial. It's all about websites. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Word Made Digital tutorials. I'm your host, Joanna LaFleur, and every week we're bringing you tutorials about how to communicate the best news in the world using tools in the digital age. These tutorials are brought to you by Compassion Canada and the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities, and we do that because we want to help you and equip you, and we know that not everyone can afford to hire in communications teams and digital teams and consultants to do that. And so that's what this series is all about. We hope that these videos help you. Would you subscribe, like, share, pass these around so that more people can get value out of these videos? And hey, let us know what kinds of content you want and we'll make it. We'll answer the questions that you have. All right, on this tutorial, we're talking about websites. Websites are, of course, critical as a welcome mat, an entry point into the ministry that you do. If you don't have a website these days for the ministry you're doing, it's almost like you don't exist because people are going to probably find you on the internet before they ever come to you physically in person. And so, of course, it's a huge question for a lot of people who have no experience building websites. We have ways we can build template-based websites like Squarespace and Wix. There's lots of companies that you can pay $5, $10, $20, $30, $50,000 to build a custom website for you. And there's a lot of room in between for different cost points and things. And so if you're wondering about how to build a website for your ministry, for your leadership platform, for the ministry that you're doing, the church that you're leading, we hope that this tutorial will help you. I've invited my friend Paul Cox to join us for this conversation because he is an expert at websites. In fact, he was a key part of the team that built the Hillsong Global website. So if you're familiar with Hillsong Church, they have locations all over the world. You can imagine how complex it would be to build a website for that kind of an organization with church locations all over the world and all kinds of complexities of the kind of content they need to do. He was a vital part of that, and out of that he really realized that he loves serving churches, and he doesn't think that churches should have to sacrifice beautiful, functional websites just because they can't afford it. And so he's all about helping churches have great websites at a reasonable price. So we're going to ask him about websites. Why don't we dive into the conversation with Paul Cox? Paul, thanks so much for being with me today. You are an expert at church websites. You've built some of the big websites that we maybe have even been on ourselves. So there's lots of churches out there who need a website. Where would you tell them to start? You know, there's do it yourself, there's hire someone for $20,000, there's all kinds of in-betweens. How does someone figure out what's right for them even?
Yeah, I think it comes to a lot of people when they're choosing a website platform, you'll sign up to 3 or 4 and try them out. And the problem that I see with that is that you're not testing the thing that you're actually going to be using. When you're trying something out, you're testing how easy is it for me to build a website. And I think what people often forget in that scenario is that building the website, that might take you a month of your own time, but you're going to maintain that website for 5, maybe 10 years, depending on how well it's built. So the thing that I like to tell people to watch out for is don't make that assumption on, how easy is it for me to get this thing up and running, because that might be super easy. There's some platforms that's what they're targeting, like get yourself up and running, but then you've kind of created yourself a nightmare in maintaining it over the next few years. So you want to, usually when I tell people that are signing up for our system, I say, jump in, don't really worry about how easy is it for you to build a page. Look at things like, how easy is it going to be for me to add a new event? How easy is it for me to add a new blog post or a new sermon? Because that's the stuff you're going to do repeatedly over and over again for all the weeks to come, right? So if those things are easy, then you're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, and what you're saying is thinking about not just the short term, but as the website would grow with more and more content over time, that it's something that you can maintain. It isn't limited to just a few pages or a few functions. If you're looking to build a new website, how often do you think that should happen? If people are wondering, like, is my website out of date? Is it time? How often do you think, as a rule of thumb, an organization should update their website if they're a church?
Yeah, so my philosophy on it is like you want to stay current in design, right? You don't want to look stale, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to rebuild your entire website all the time, right? You want the core functionality of your website to kind of stay current. Like, I'd imagine you don't want to have to import, 5 years of sermons every time you want to rebuild your website. So a good platform, will have those things separated. So you've got the system of managing your content, but you can kind of change the look of your website as you go. And that should be done. If you look at when we did Hillsong, that was in 2012, I think, is when we launched it. And that site is still up with kind of a very similar design now, and it's still current. So it all depends on how well you do that first round. But I like to stay current on the design trends, basically. Like if you notice yourself changing your style a lot in church, like maybe it's time to tweak the website to match that. Usually, like we see around about the 5-year mark is when that happens.
And when people are deciding, there's so many platforms, WordPress, Squarespace. Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons, total custom site? Talk about some of the pros and cons. Like if you're a church of 1,000 people, there's different reasons at different sizes. But if you're just sort of an average church, what would be some of the pros and cons of some of these different types of platforms that are popular?
For sure. If I need to call them by name, I can. But like I said, like there's some like Wix, right, where it's really easy for you to get up and running, right? But the problem is the code that it generates isn't great, so you start to see your ranking in Google start to fall, right? And it's a visual editor, which means something like adding a sermon can take a lot longer because you have to kind of redesign that from scratch every time, right? So that's one of those ones that's easy to get started, really hard to maintain, and usually like not the best recommendation like that I would give. Something like Squarespace or Webflow, things like that are all very design focused, which means you probably will hire a designer to get up and running and looking good. But then you'll need like a good amount of training to make sure that you're not, when they hand it over and you're maintaining it, you're not kind of making it look progressively worse. Because like when I build websites, I like to think like anyone with no design experience at all can keep this thing looking great. Like it's log in, make a change, the design still matches. But those type of systems, you have to redesign kind of every page, every time. There's other systems like ours, which take the other approach, whereas like we separate the design and we make it like a really solid design, which we do for you. And then we make those things quite a bit easier. So yes, I guess speaking on those, you just want to think like if you go with a full custom website, like that's a great thing to do. I would probably do it if you're like quite a large church because you will need someone to maintain that. Like if you go with a full custom WordPress site, you're probably going to need a developer to kind of stick around and make sure things are getting updated, every few months when updates are released. So like I think everything from my perspective is look at maintenance, not just that initial like wow factor of the design, because the maintenance is where it's going to cost you. And like so that's the thing with our platform is when you go with us, it's like, we take care of all that maintenance so that you don't have to, because the idea is that you should focus on running your church. So you want the website to kind of fit into what you're doing and not kind of take away from what you're doing via your time, because your time actually is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, you're talking about maintenance and time. I think that's a huge thing that people don't think about when they're building a website. They're just thinking, we did it, it's out the door. But in your experience, how much or how often is a website being edited, tweaked, maintained? How much would you recommend if a senior leader is thinking of hiring someone on or assigning this to somebody on their team to be the person overseeing the website? How much do you think that they would be on this on a given week or month?
Well, I think at minimum, you need to be uploading your sermons each week, right? So that's just a quick one. Like definitely log into your website on Monday or Tuesday, whenever you start the week, and update it to be the latest. I think another thing that we don't see people doing that I would love to see people doing is, when you update last week's sermon, put a teaser up for next week's sermon, like get people excited about the next week. And I think the issue we see with church websites a lot is they look more like posters, like you've printed it out, you've hung it on the wall, and there it is. And then you come back and it's February and it still says, join us for Christmas Eve. like you want the platform to kind of be smart enough to take care of those things for you, but you're going to do better the more you log in. So I wouldn't say there's like a time cap. I personally, we've managed thousands of websites and probably, don't spend like a crazy amount of time to keep those things up and running because, we've put the groundwork in at the beginning. But you don't want your website to feel static. Like imagine you went to Facebook and it was always just the same content. You want people to come back and you want them to want to come back because there's new content there for them to see. Easy ways to do that: write blogs, update events, highlight things that happened on the weekend, but give people a reason to come back to your.
Now, you have a lot of data on websites for churches specifically because you host thousands of church websites. What are the top couple pages that people like to go to on church websites?
I like to rule out the homepage because that's like always number one is the homepage, right? So just quick couple things on the homepage, like think of it as Instagram. People are going to click and scroll, right? So you don't really want to cycle through a bunch of images at the top because it's likely someone's going to load it, see it, scroll down. So you want to kind of give them opportunities while they're scrolling to catch their attention, like with service times, things for the kids, upcoming events. The second most important page, according to all of our analytics, is the About page. And like actually @/about. So not one of those like about links that has like what we believe our team and everything underneath it that you can't click about. Like you want to actually click on the About page and then have that go down, because we've seen that is the second highest clicked page on all of our platform is the About page. So those two, if you put all of your effort into it, I think you'll have a really great return. We've seen a really great return for our customers putting a lot of focus on those two pages.
A lot of pastors that I work with, the most important page to them is the sermon page because it's their life's work, really. And so they care very much about it. But in your mind, are people going to that page, or do they prefer to find content like a sermon on a totally different platform? Like, are they going to Spotify and iTunes, or are they actually going to the website anyways for that?
I mean, think of all the podcasts you listen to. If you're a podcast listener, when was the last time you went to that podcast website and listened to it via the website? For me, it's never. I don't do that. The other thing that we have that, I mean, if you're a pastor and you're listening to this and you're like, no, my sermons page is the most important page and people are definitely doing it, pull up your Google Analytics and look at the time on site thing. If it's 45 minutes to an hour, then you have a good indication that people are sitting there on your sermons page and listening to an entire sermon. What we find is time on site for us on average for all of our customers is around 1:40, which is actually really high. But that shows us people aren't consuming that media via the website. So I think it's nice from a teaser standpoint. And it's also nice for you to have this archive of all of your work as a pastor. But it's also really important to know that a lot of your visitors and people that are actually browsing your website, it's not statistically the highest visited page or even the thing that they're looking to the most. They might watch honestly, if you think your sermon is the thing bringing them in, it might be better to do a real quick 5-minute YouTube style presentation that includes sound bites of your sermon, because I think that would actually draw people into your church more, because it's more contextual how people watch on Reels and everything on Instagram. So it's nice for the library's sake, but statistics kind of show that it's not really where visitors or even members are spending their time on your website.
When we talk about SEO, search engine optimization, what is it that churches could do better or maybe don't understand about what's happening on their website that makes them harder to find?
Yeah, so I think the best analogy I have for SEO is you're searching something, right? So imagine you open up a Word document and you want to find the words church in Baltimore, and you hit Command F if you're on a Mac, Control F if you're on a PC, and you write church in Baltimore. If you didn't write those words in the Word document, you're not going to match those words. You're going to find 0 results, right? So if you're a church in Baltimore and you want to start ranking in Google, you should have those words on your website. Same thing for your women's ministry, right? If you want women's programs in, I don't know why I'm going with Baltimore, but if women's programs in Baltimore, right, then you should have that written somewhere. I think we get real clever, when we title all of our ministries these events, but it's nice to have at least in a subheading, whatever you call your women's events, a women's group in, and list the city that you're in. So it's not like this big magic box. You want to give Google words to match so that when people search them, it matches it and shows your results. So, one of the other great things that you can do is give Google more words, like write blog posts, post your upcoming events. The more context or content you're giving Google, the more matches it's going to find. So I think we often think of SEO as like this magic thing, and you can get into that step, but as a basic step, you just want to give words that Google can match, and you'll get a good result for that.
As a last question, just want to give you a chance to talk about why did you start the Church Co? What problem are you trying to solve, and who is it for?
So the Church Co exists because I have a massive background as a software developer. And I feel that churches need higher quality websites that are easier to maintain, but also that don't break the bank, right? Our plans are $20 a month and we build a website for you. The reason we build a website for you is touching on that maintenance thing. Like, we don't feel that you need to know how to build a website. We want it to be really easy for you to maintain your website for the next 10, 20 years. And so we take care of the design, we take care of the setup, we do it all in a week, and then we give it back to you and say, run for it with this. We built it smart the same way I was talking about with the themes. So every few years, you can just browse our theme library, click a button, and you're on a new modern theme. So you're always on trend. But the idea is like, we don't want you to be spending hours a week on your website. We have a whole team for that, and we're very quick at it. So we want to kind of like facilitate your ministry growth without taking your time away. So we kind of like fit into what you're doing, but also like, if we can pat ourselves on the back, like the website quality is quite high compared to something like, if you invited me to come and preach at your church on Sunday, I can't preach. It's not going to be great. If you wanted me to lead worship, I'm a drummer. I can't sing. It's going to be awful, right? So it's kind of the same when you try to build your own website. Like, websites are in our hand. That's what God's kind of asked us to do. So we want to do that and help as many churches as possible to kind of free you up to do your thing.
I hope that that conversation with Paul was helpful to you, gave you some key insights into what to think about if you're thinking about building a new website or just updating one that you already have. Maintenance is key. Did you notice that in the conversation we had? That you want to think not just about how to build the website, but is the website you're getting easy to maintain? And easy to maintain by someone who isn't going to need to be like a web development, IT tech person. Can it be updated and maintained by someone with just a basic computer skill? The second thing we want to highlight for you, of course, is you want to think about SEO. You want to be able to be found on the internet. And so anything you can do to boost up the words that are on your website so that they might match the kind of words that people in your community are looking for when they're looking for a church, when they're looking for help. Maybe they're looking for a divorce lawyer, but they're going to find you instead because you've put those kinds of words into the content of your website and you're thinking about your pages that way. Now, the last thing I just want to remind you of is that it doesn't need to cost a lot to build a website. You don't need, if you're a smaller organization, to hire a company and spend tens of thousands of dollars to build a website. Not in the 2020s. There's lots of ways to do it more affordably. Now, Paul Cox offered an example with the Church Co. That's the company he runs. I've got a link below if you want to check out what they do. I have used the Church Co. for websites for my clients, for churches just like you. I have used the Church Co. myself and I have been really happy with the product, but there's lots of other recommendations. I'm going to link some down below. I use Squarespace a lot as well for the do-it-yourself kind of website, but of course if you don't have any design skill, you're probably going to want to hire someone to help you build it, and then maybe you'll just from there maintain it yourself. I hope this tutorial has been helpful to you. We bring these tutorials to you week after week, and it wouldn't be possible without support from our sponsors. Compassion Canada is serving and meeting the needs of vulnerable children around the world right now in this holiday season. 2020 has been crazy, and it's been especially crazy and difficult and challenging for families who are already living in poverty. We've gone back, it seems like a decade in terms of our progress with eradication of poverty, and Compassion Canada, through the local church in these local communities around the world, is doing something about it. We'd love you to get involved. There's still time to get gifts for the holiday season. If you're still thinking about what to get somebody, compassion.ca/gifts is a great place to go to think about a gift that you might want to give someone that would be fun for them to receive and super creative, but also would benefit a child in need around the world. Also, thank you, of course, to the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities. They are an amazing arm of the church, an arm of charity and ministry in Canada to help you do things that you were never equipped to do. Just like websites, if you're a pastor or a leader, you maybe were never trained and equipped in how to do websites. Well, in the same way, you maybe were never equipped in board governance and legal issues and finances and human resources. These are the kind of things that the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities helps their members with. They have over 3,300 members across the country. Maybe if you're a Canadian charity, you already are a member. But we would love for you to check out what membership would be for you, because it will help you and resource you with things you may need to do month after month, year after year, but don't have in-house skill for. We hope these tutorials are helpful for you, as we said. We would love for you to share them with your friends, like, subscribe, pass these around so that more Christian leaders across Canada and then beyond can get help with things like websites and all the other resources we have. Check out wordmadedigital.com for more resources, tools, blogs, podcasts, video content, all kinds of resources that are free for you to help you communicate the best news in the world. And we'll see you next week on the tutorial.